to start. The wind is picking up just in time. You're looking at a live shot looking down the Cordova Hill, so-called Heartbreak Hill at the 15th and Cordova. This is some video from last year. A lot of exciting things happened on this hill last year, mainly because of the wind. This is a great shot of Roxy Wright Champagne passing Eddie Streeper on day 2, the final day of the race last year. And Ed, a lot of factors in this hill. First, going out, what are the mushers looking at?
Well, the prime concern is to keep these tug lines on their sleds tight, because you don't want those dogs bunching up down there, and it's all that has to happen is that tug line get down, one of the lines get wrapped around the dog's leg, and then they've got to stop down there and untangle it. So they'll be dragging their feet going all the way down the hill, trying to slow them down so the sled doesn't catch up with that team.
And how about coming back?
Coming back, they're going to be running as hard as they can. And one of the things that's nice that they've done this year, I don't know if the camera can swing over here, but we've got a snow berm all the way down Cordova Road here that's only about 8 or 9 feet wide compared to this 30 feet stretch wide road. And last year, the dogs just seemed to go on both sides of the road, and this will keep them focused and headed right back down to 4th Avenue. So this is a much improvement over the 6 years I've been here anyway.
They have a whole lot of problems with that last year. One team even ended up on a porch across the street. Went up the porch down the other side. Bill Kornmuller. That's it from 15th and Cordova for now. Let's go back down.
Go to 15th and Cordova.
Here's the first team coming down the hill. What's the time, Ed?
3:33. That's about the same times we had last year for Eddie Streeper's teams.
Very fast right out of the gate, and if our math is right, it's about, could that be 17 miles an hour or so?
Approximately 17 miles an hour. We'll know for sure here a little later.
So there's a little more time to work on that math, but that's our estimate at this point. John Wood heading toward 15th Avenue on Cordova, heading for the Cordova Hill. First, Bob Klupach came by at 3:32, a second faster than the first musher. Here's John Wood's time.
3:45.
A little bit slower, apparently having a little trouble with his leaders.
That's what we heard on one of the radios up on 4th and Cordova, that he was having a problem. But they look fine going down this hill as they head out towards the bike trail there.
Almost here, the 4th musher to come through the 15th Avenue. We're exactly a mile from the finish line, just about actually, and that's how we're able to give you the miles an hour. How about his time?
George had the fastest time of 3:28 through this checkpoint.
He's moving. Better than 17.5 miles an hour. And Ed, there's a bare spot on the road here, right at just past 15th Avenue. How come?
Well, we were told that they have to keep the entrance open for this apartment building, and consequently it's completely bare here. So those drivers like George that drag their feet going down this hill have a much better advantage over the ones who ride their brake, like Bob Klupach down there. If he breaks his brake here, he's got 20-some miles without a brake.
Okay, we'll be watching that. John Carp? Earl is on his way to 15th Avenue. He'll be the 5th team to come through here. Again, the wind picking up a bit. They may feel that more coming back than heading down, Ed, if this continues to blow here.
I'm sure they appreciate it now because it's at their back, but not for very long as they go down this hill. And he's here in 3 minutes and 42 seconds.
All pretty close, within about 10-12 seconds of each other so far, about a mile into the race, Carp. On his way to 15th, just about to head down the Cordova Hill. The time?
3 minutes and 27 seconds.
Again, right up there, one of the fastest along with George Atlas so far. 6 teams by here so far, Carp. Here's Roxy Wright Champagne, the 7th musher to come through here. And Ed, we'll get you the time here first.
Looks like Roxy's going to have the fastest time through here in about 3 minutes and 20 seconds.
Wow, 7 seconds, 8 seconds faster than Greg Taylor, the previously fastest musher to this point, and she doesn't even like to go out that fast.
No, I don't remember Roxy having the fastest time at 15th and Cordova. She normally makes her move out there on the airstrip, and I'm sure we'll hear Bill Waddell talk about the time out there and when she makes it, but maybe those Alparad dogs think that this is, with this hill here, they're back in Switzerland.
Carp?
Oh, here we go.
Neil Johnson, just crossing 15th Avenue.
3 minutes and 42 seconds.
Again, right with the pack, the rest of them 3:42 for Neil Johnson from Minnesota. And Mark Pearson just crossing 15th Avenue.
3 minutes and 44 seconds.
Again, all except for Roxy, all within about 10 or 12 seconds of each other. Still Roxy at 3:20, the fastest to this point. And you're right, no trophy yet, but we're happy about it anyway. Still apparently having more problems back at 6th Avenue just as he turned down to Cordova. And that's Terry Streeper heading down Cordova Hill, and we still have seen no sign of Dan Daigle, Ed.
And Terry's time was 3:23 as he crossed here, and those 22 or 4 dogs look good as they go onto the bike trail.
Just 3 seconds slower than Roxy's time. Curtis Earhart, the time, Ed?
3:29.
Which was the exact time as you see him ride the brake down the hill. About 3 or 4 of them have ridden the brake, mostly just the boots, though.
Yeah, and he had the exact same time as Larry Tallman, just ahead of him, 3:29.
Okay, back down to Carp. And here he is, Dan Daigle, finally making it to 15th after a couple of problems already at his time.
9:23, and we heard that Marvin Cochran, we can see him now, I mean not Marvin, but Bill Kornmuller is right behind him down the road there. But he was at 9:23, I'm sorry.
Okay, and here's another team right behind him.
This is Bill Kornmuller, and he's at about 3:43.
And Terry Streeper already passed Dan Daigle. Let's go back to Carp. Crossing 15.
At 3 minutes and 31 seconds.
Eddie Dayton went by a couple of minutes ago at 3:44. Again, most of the pack right in that about 3:30, 3:40 range. Carp. All right. Curtis Earhart, the time, Ed?
3:29.
Which was the exact time as you see him ride the brake down the hill. About 3 or 4 of them have ridden the brake, mostly just the boots, though.
Yeah, and he had the exact same time as Larry Tallman, just ahead of him, 3:29.
Okay, back down to Carp. Axel Gasser riding the brake down the Cordova Hill. The time 3:37, not a bad time for rookie Ed.
No, it's not a bad time at all. And Ross was through just before that in 3:28.
John Carpenter, we understand that Janet Clark has apparently lost her team. The team has gotten to the Lake Otis checkpoint. Janet Clark wasn't with them, but somebody's holding the team, we understand.
That's what we heard from the club radio here, that her team is at the checkpoint. Someone's holding it, and they're just waiting for Janet to get there. If she recatches the team, then she can continue on.
She doesn't have to come back or anything. No. Just keep going. Okay, that's the word from here, Carp.
That's it. That's a tough one, this lost team business. You know, that's the greatest concern when that occurs initially is the safety of the dogs. When they're running within control, and then you certainly, as a second concern, worry about those behind you and the effect that you may have on them. But it seems like, from what we hear, that everything is probably pretty much under control, and the rules do allow her, should she retake that team under her own power, meaning her own 2 feet, that she can continue in the race. With outside assistance, such as a snow machine or whatever ride, she cannot continue in the race.
So basically, she's got to hoof it back to the team wherever they're at.
But hopefully she's not too far away.
Has that ever happened to you, Charlie?
It has, much to my great displeasure. It has, and I, in fact, commandeered a helicopter to catch my team. Well, that's pretty good style, at least.
Well, some people have clubs.
That's true. I was beating it on down the trails, running for as fast as I could. And there was a fellow sitting there with a helicopter shut off. So I said, hey, you. Going my way?
All right,
Well, we're still waiting to hear if Janet Clark has actually left Lake Otis. We know she had to run at least some distance to catch up with her team after losing them, but whether that was a couple hundred yards or a mile or so, that could make a big difference in her performance today.
And she looked awfully good coming through here, too. It's a real shame. But if she's all right and if she's gone, which I think she is, I was trying to listen on our Astor Club radio here, she should be getting real close to Tudor Road. So Bill and John Renan ought to be seeing her real soon out there.
Okay, crucial point in the race, especially for Janet Clark at this point. 16th Avenue, and then to make the march up the Cordova Hill. Ed, that is Mr. Kahn, is it not?
It sure is. He's working hard coming around the scoreboard.
And based on the times that John Renan just gave, he's doing pretty well so far.
He's just about 85 minutes now, so we'll see what he gets to at the top of this hill here. But they're looking strong. They're coming up this hill strong.
How tough is it to come up this hill, Ed?
Well, I've only walked up this hill, and I've tried to run it a couple times, and let me tell you, this is really, really tough. But you can see Jeff, he's off that sled with one leg kicking, and those leaders are coming up very strong.
And luckily, for some reason, at least right now, the wind has completely stopped, at least relatively speaking. It was really blowing just a couple of minutes ago. Last year, all sorts of problems when these dogs first hit the wind, just whipping down the Cordova Hill.
His time was 85:29.
Pretty good crowd on hand, giving Jeff Kahn a hand as he makes it up the hill with very little problem. Team's about to cross 16th Avenue to head up the Cordova Hill. We're pretty sure that it's Bob Klupach and John Wood. We're not sure yet, or are we, Ed, which is first?
John Wood appears to be in the lead as they're approaching 16th Street now. John's having a little bit of a problem in the middle of his team. and they're stopped as Cameron. There he goes again.
Yeah, he forced Klupacz to stop his team, actually. So John Wood must have just passed Klupacz because Klupacz went out ahead of him. And they're both going to come up this hill together.
Well, I'm not sure where they passed, but Bob was, he knows that John has 2 minutes on him, so I doubt he'll try to repass him again unless John Wood has more problems here.
Having a little trouble making it up the hill. A couple of the dogs, he's actually walking the sled up. And he actually is, Bob Klupacz is sort of going to make a move on the inside here, Ed. And John Wood has stopped his team, and Bob Klupacz will go by to go back ahead of John Wood, right?
No, that was Greg Taylor.
Oh,
We're sorry. That was Greg Taylor, and John Wood's team's gone over the berm there, and he's still having problems.
Okay, our apologies. That was Greg Taylor who went flying by John Wood. That makes a little more sense. John Wood sort of pulled off to the side of the road and is now back on the trail and heading toward the finish line. Looks like George Atlet at the base of the Cordova Hill. Is that number 4? You could probably tell easier at home than I can tell here. George Atlet pumping up the Cordova Hill, looking pretty good.
It's looking real good, Tim, though the dogs are coming over here a little bit to get a look at the camera.
George Atlet's been up this hill a few times, huh?
Yes, he has, and it looks like he has at least one in his basket there. Can't tell how many, but there's at least one. He's headed downtown.
Briefly, I mentioned the rule change regarding the dog in the basket.
The dog has to be completely confined in the basket. No part of it can be hanging on either side of the sled, and it takes a little longer to do that, but it's a lot safer for the dogs.
Sometimes in past years, you've seen the dog sort of riding on top of the basket instead of in the sled.
Yes, and sometimes their arms and legs can come out, or legs can come out when that happens, and it's much more safer for the dogs this way. And we'll have the times for you in a minute.
Okay, we do have 2 more teams are happening here, but the team that you can see in the background there stopped. And the team that with the musher sprinting at the base of the hill here flew by him. Can you tell who it is, Ed?
Looks like.
Okay, Roxy just motoring. How's she looking, Ed?
Her leaders are holding back a little bit here, but when they get across 15th, she'll be all right. You can
Also
see she has one dog in the basket, as Charlie was talking about.
Her leaders may be holding back, but she sure wasn't coming up that hill.
Ethan Cordova.
Richard Burrows coming up the Cordova Hill, and it is Bob Klupacz still stopped down at the base of the hill.
Richard is having a little problem in the middle of his team, too. His leaders are balking. He's all right now.
Getting a little help.
He's headed down there fine.
Got him strung out now, and
he'll be on his way in a minute. Making secure that dog secured in the basket.
Okay, let's go back down to. He looks like he put a dog in the basket and is now about halfway up the Cordova Hill. Ed, how's he looking?
He's looking pretty good. Of course, the dog's rested back there. Is a black wheel dog is holding back quite a bit, neck lining there. Not sure he wants to.
Okay, Carp.
All right, we have an official.
Welcome back to the Ferrandi World Championship sled dog race. You're watching Terry Streeper coming up the Cordova Hill now. And
his team has all 24 dogs are still running, and they came up here about as strong as Greg Taylor did. And Terry, that Canadian Express is just flying down to 4th Avenue. That is the straightest line we've seen come up this hill.
Most dogs, straightest line. Let's go out to John Bernan. Teams now all kind of bunched together crossing 16th Avenue. Ed, can you tell which one this is?
Yes, the first team coming up is Mark Pearson, followed by Dan Daigle, and Bill Kornmuller is right behind him.
We saw Mr. Pearson looking back. We were wondering what he was looking at. Well, he was looking at Dan Daigle, I guess, who was right behind him, and then another team right behind him. They were talking about Terry Streeper and how strong his dogs looked and how much power it gave him coming up a hill like this. He sure looked good coming up the hill.
Boy, he sure did look good coming up this hill, Tim. He looked the strongest one I've seen coming up this hill. Although Dan Daigle, I'm not sure if you can see down there that how Dan Daigle's team looks pretty strong coming up compared to this team that is just trotting up this hill. Dan looks pretty good after all that trouble he had. You notice Bill Kornmuller hasn't gained a whole lot on him. If I'm not mistaken, Bill went out. Bill was about that far behind Dan when they got here to the first time. So Dan and Bill have run a pretty close race once they left 15th here for the first time.
We could have a pass here pretty
Dan's
quick.
dogs are on the
Dan
other side of
Daigle.
the road here now.
And Bill
he's-
Kornmuller almost neck and neck here. And one of them is it's Dan Daigle actually running on outside of the track, but I guess that's okay. He's on the
Well,
hard
he's
surface,
on
not a lot of snow.
He's on 15th and Cordova, but he's on a much harder surface over there, so he'll have some sore feet, but his time will be a little faster.
Okay, let's go out to Jackie.
Woolston, tell you what's going on down at the 15th and Cordova.
We have another team here, Carp, coming up to 16th Avenue. Ed, can you tell who it is?
It's Marvin Cochrane. He's just crossing, just about to cross 16th Street now.
It's a pretty steep hill here. How do the mushers train
That's
for this sort of
86.
thing? Any of these sorts of hills out on the trails they ride? Obviously, they can't come up Cordova Hill most of the time.
No, not on our trails here in town. No, we don't have anything like this. It's a pretty flat system. But out in Chugiak, they have a couple hills that are, in fact, one of them is called Heartbreak, and I've run up that a couple times with 4 dogs, and to me it's a lot tougher than this one. But you can see Marvin's dogs, the difference here in those teams. Look at the leaders digging and pulling, and they're not trotting like some of the teams that we've seen come by here. Marvin's working as hard as he always does on the back of that sled coming up the hill.
Marvin,
He's having problems. They all seem to be going down on the other side of that.
they do have, because they've got a wide surface to come up at the base of the hill here, and they get up to the top, and it gets extremely narrower, and several teams have ended up on the wrong side of the berm, and I don't know if you can see.
And Kathy Hayashi, the handler, is helping Marvin get on the other side of that berm. I don't know why they come up and go over to that right-hand side, but we've had about 5 teams do that now, and Kathy's getting a workout.
There goes Marvin Cochrane headed home on day one. The base of the hill, I believe it's Larry Tallman.
Looks like Larry Tallman, and then we have another team coming around the scoreboard behind them there.
Larry Tallman of Dunster, British Columbia, now at the base of the Cordova Hill. Not a whole lot of problems. We've had a couple of problems at the top of the hill. They get up to the top of the hill and they bunched up a couple of times.
Boy, they sure have. They've gone over there on that paved side, but this team is on the left-hand side of the street, and if the policemen will stay there they go right down. This looks like it's probably Curtis Earhart coming.
Okay. We're seeing 4th Avenue, so let's go back down to Carp and see. Jumping up the hill, and right behind him, you'll see him in just a couple of minutes. Ross Saunderson now just passing 16th Avenue. That right there is Curtis Earhart, and we'll get the camera to turn around here if you can in a second to get Ross Saunderson. Let's go back out to John Bernan first, though. There's Ross Saunderson, looking crisp. Those leaders look good too, huh, Ed?
Boy, they sure do. Ross's team looks just like Terry's coming up this hill. They've stayed on there on the right side of the road, and they're heading down to 4th Avenue.
Okay, Carp over hill, our first rookie, Axel Gasser from Fairbanks, stringing him out pretty well. Got a little problem at the back there. How's he looking?
He's looking pretty good coming up this hill. He's cracking his whip to keep him focused there, smacking the sled just so they can hear it. And he may have some problems on the top of this hill because they're over there on the side where that bare part is there. See if Kathy can get him on the main part of the road here. And there they go. They're fine. They'll be heading down there.
No problem for Axel Gasser. He's got to the top of the Cordova Hill. And
Tim is with Ed.
thanks, Carp. A couple of teams. I think we have 3 teams yet to go through, but no sign of any of them. I'm not sure we're going to see any of them come up the hill here before we go off the air for today's broadcast. And the times aside, who do you think looked the strongest today?
I think both Ross and Terry look pretty strong, and Roxy. But the key, I think, Terry has those 24 dogs, and Ross started out, I believe, with 20. So it just depends on how many Terry drops tomorrow and how many Ross. If Terry can run close to 24, he's going to be in an awfully strong position, even though he's about 4 seconds behind.
Okay, let's go to John Overall, who's got Ross Saunderson in the pitch. John.